Here's why you play Garo in the farm lane in honor of kings. First off, Garo is a powerful marksman who excels at dealing consistent range damage while having utility to weaken enemy defenses. She has high burst potential with her criticals and excels at kiting enemies with slows and silences. Her skilling potential is strong, making her a deadly late game threat. However, she is mana dependent and requires good positioning to avoid being bursted down by assassins or crowd control. Garo's passive, Piercing Arrow, allows his basic attacks and skill damage to prioritize dealing 50% bonus damage to shields, making her effective against tanky enemies with defensive abilities. Garo's first skill, Enchanted Arrows, draws her longbow, increasing her attack range and slowing her attack speed slightly. Each attack consumes mana, but deals bonus magic damage over time. When she switches back to her closed longbow, she restores mana per hit and gains movement speed, allowing for mobility and sustain. Garo's second skill, Silent Arrow, fires a silent arrow that damages, silences, and slows the first enemy hit. The arrow explodes after 1 second, dealing additional magic damage in an area. The casting speed of this skill increases with her attack speed, making it faster in the late game. Garo's ultimate, Sphere of Purity, creates a magic circle around her, boosting her attack speed and critical rate. The activation and deactivation of the circle deal magic damage to nearby enemies. If Garo closes the circle early, allies inside gain a critical strike and movement speed buff. Her critical hits apply slows, making it easier to chase or escape enemies. Moving on to builds, I usually build Roots of Dexterity, Shadow Ripper, Eternity Blade, Blood Reaper, Daybreaker, and finally, Sun Chaser. These are the arcanas that go along with this build. As for common skills, the best common skills for Garo in my opinion is Flash, as it helps her reposition and escape from threats, especially against assassins and divers. Garo counters heroes who rely on shields as her passive helps break them faster. She also performs well against slow moving or low mobility heroes as her silence and slows prevent them from escaping. However, Garo struggles against assassins and burst mages who can close the gap quickly and burst her down before she can react. She also has a hard time against crowd control heavy heroes that prevents her from using her skills efficiently. You should prioritize upgrading second skill first for better damage and utility, followed up by first skill for more consistent poke damage, and most importantly, upgrade the ultimate whenever available to maximize teamfight impact. Garo is a late game carry that shines when she gets her core items. Focus on farming in the early game and avoid unnecessary fights until you build attack speed and crit items. Use second skill to poke enemies and interrupt key abilities in fights. Position yourself carefully when using Sphere of Purity, which is the ultimate, to maximize damage and support your team. Always be aware of mana consumption, especially when using your first skill, and switch to close longbow mode when you need to regain mana. In team fights, use Flash to reposition and kite enemies, taking advantage of a high damage and slows to control fights.